Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's John here, and I want to start today with a question. Have you ever had one of those conversations that seems to follow you around, no matter where you are in the world? For us, there's a particular one that comes up again and again, especially when we meet fellow travelers or answer questions online. People always look at Karen, with her camera perpetually around her neck and her uncanny ability to find the most beautiful sliver of light, and they ask, "What's your favorite place?" It's a simple question, but the answer is anything but. How do you pick just one? Do you choose the most dramatic mountain peak? The most serene beach? The city that buzzed with an energy you'd never felt before? It's an impossible task, really. It's like trying to choose your favorite breath of air. Karen, she always gives a thoughtful, meandering answer that never quite lands on a single spot, because for her, it's never just about the place. It's about the entire experience. It's the journey to get there, the weather on the day, the feeling in the air, the memory that gets fused to the landscape forever. So, we had an idea. Instead of trying to answer that impossible question, we thought we'd do something a little different today. We're going to share the stories of two very specific moments that always come to Karen's mind. They aren't just places, they are experiences that bookend a perfect day. We're going to take you to her favorite sunrise and her favorite sunset. And it feels fitting to talk about it now. We're currently parked up high in the French Alps, with jagged peaks all around us, and the air has that crisp, clean feel that always gets us thinking about other mountain adventures. The sun is just starting to dip below the horizon here, painting everything in gold, and it sent us right down memory lane. So, let's start at the beginning of the day. For this, we have to travel back a couple of years, to a place of sheer, raw, vertical beauty. We have to go to the Italian Dolomites. Karen, you want to set the scene for this one? I'd love to. Imagine the darkest dark you can think of, the kind that feels heavy, like a blanket. Now imagine a sound slicing through it. The most unwelcome, jarring sound in the world, a 3 a.m. alarm on a mobile phone. That's where our story begins. In the cozy warmth of our van, Serendipity, parked in a small campground near Cortina d'Ampezzo, with the promise of something spectacular waiting for us, if only we could convince our bodies to cooperate. I remember groaning and rolling over, trying to hit snooze. But there was no snoozing this alarm. John is not what you'd call a morning person, in the traditional sense. He's a once the coffee is brewed person. But I was already wide awake, buzzing with a nervous energy. I'd seen the photos, I'd read the blogs. I knew what was waiting for us up there, and the thought of it was a stronger stimulant than any caffeine. She was practically vibrating. I, on the other hand, was trying to remember how to put on socks in the dark. The plan was to drive up the toll road to the Refugio Oronzo, a mountain hut that serves as the main base for exploring one of the most iconic formations in the Dolomites, the Tres Cimes di Laveridu, or the Three Peaks of Laveridu. But we weren't there for the main attraction, not really. Karen had found a secret. A viewpoint that looked away from the famous peaks, towards a different, wilder range called the Cadini di Misurina. The drive itself was the first part of the adventure. It's a narrow, winding mountain pass, full of hairpin turns. In the daytime, it's stunning. In the pitch black of pre-dawn, it's intense. All you have are your headlights cutting a small tunnel through the absolute black. You can't see the spectacular views, but you can feel the emptiness just beyond the flimsy guardrail. You sense the sheer drops. Every so often, the headlights would catch the eyes of a chamois on the side of the road, staring at us before disappearing back into the shadows. I was gripping the dashboard, not out of fear, but anticipation. John was completely focused, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. It's in moments like these that you really appreciate the trust you have in each other. He's a fantastic driver, calm and steady, but I don't think his heart rate was exactly relaxed. Relaxed is not the word I would use. Concentrating. Very, very concentrated. You're hyper-aware of every sound the engine makes, every little bit of gravel under the tires. You climb, and the air gets thinner, colder. Finally, we pulled into the vast, empty parking lot at the Refugio. It was just after 4 a.m. The engine ticked as it cooled, and the silence that descended when we turned it off was profound. We were above the tree line, almost 2,400 meters up, and it felt like we were on the moon. Now, it was my turn to take the lead. Getting out of the warm van was a shock to the system. The cold was biting. It went right through your clothes. We layered up, thermals, fleeces, down jackets, hats, gloves. We looked like a couple of mismatched Michelin men. I checked our day packs one last time: water, a thermos of hot tea John had insisted on, some snacks, and most importantly, our headlamps. I remember fumbling with the clasp on my headlamp, my fingers already numb. Karen, of course, was ready to go, her beam already dancing across the gravel path. "This way," she whispered, as if we might wake the mountains. The hike wasn't particularly long, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, but in the dark and the cold, it felt like an expedition. The world was reduced to the small circle of light at our feet. You could hear the crunch of our boots on the trail, our own breathing, and the faint, whispery sound of the wind moving through the rock spires somewhere out there in the blackness. You can't see the scale of where you are, which is both unnerving and magical. You're just putting one foot in front of the other, trusting the path. And trusting your navigator. At one point, we came to a fork in the faint trail. One path seemed to go slightly up, the other slightly down. In the dark, they looked identical. Which way, fearless leader?" I asked, only half joking. My toes were starting to feel like ice cubes. This is where preparation pays off. One of the golden rules of van life, and hiking in general: don't rely on having a phone signal. I had downloaded an offline map of the trails onto my phone the day before. I pulled it out, my screen glowing in the darkness. After a moment of turning the map and orienting ourselves with the faint outline of a ridge I could just make out, I pointed. "It's the lower path. It winds around that outcrop. Thank goodness for that. I think my path would have led us straight to a goat." We continued on, the path getting narrower. We had to walk in single file. I could see the small, steady light from Karen's headlamp just ahead of me, a comforting beacon. The anticipation was building in me now, too. The sky was no longer a pure, inky black. It was shifting to a deep, bruised indigo in the east. The show was about to start. And then, we came around a final bend in the path. And we stopped. We both just stopped breathing for a second. There it was. The Cadini di Misurina. Even in the faint, pre-dawn light, it was one of the most breathtaking things I had ever seen. It wasn't a single mountain, it was a forest of stone spires, jagged and cruel and beautiful, like a dragon's teeth tearing at the edge of the sky. We had found the spot. A narrow, exposed ridge that pointed directly at the peaks. We stood there, side by side, as the world began to wake up. There was no one else around. It was just us, the wind, and the mountains. And then, the colors started. It's a phenomenon they call enrosadira in this region, or alpenglow. It happens because of the unique mineral composition of the dolomite rock. As the first rays of sun hit the peaks, they don't just illuminate them, they set them on fire. The change is so subtle at first you almost miss it. A soft violet touches the highest tips. Then it deepens into a rosy pink, then a burning, brilliant orange. The sky behind the peaks was a gradient of impossible shades. Deep blue melting into purple, then magenta, then a fiery slash of crimson right on the horizon. It was a spectacle of light and color that felt ancient and sacred. You feel so incredibly small, so insignificant in the face of that kind of grandeur. All the petty worries, the to-do lists, the anxieties of modern life, they just evaporate. They have no place up there. I had my camera out, of course. I was snapping away, trying desperately to capture a fraction of the majesty in front of us. But John, he did something that I'll never forget. After taking 1 or 2 photos with his phone, he put it back in his pocket. He just stood there, watching. He was present in a way that I, with my photographer's brain, sometimes struggle to be. I knew no photo could ever do it justice. It was a feeling, not an image. It was the biting cold on my cheeks, the sound of Karen's soft gasp beside me, the sheer, overwhelming scale of it all. I wanted to burn the memory into my mind, not just onto a memory card. We didn't speak for a long time. There were no words that would have been adequate. We just stood there, holding hands, as the sun finally crested the horizon and bathed the entire landscape in warm, golden light. Eventually, the most intense colors faded, settling into the clear blue of a new day. The magic moment had passed, but the feeling remained. I turned to John, my face stiff with cold but smiling so hard it hurt. "Worth the 3 a.m. alarm?" I asked. He just wrapped his arm around me and pulled me into a hug. "Karen," he said into my hat, "that was worth 100 3 a.m. alarms." We finally poured some of that hot tea from the thermos. It had never tasted so good. The hike back was a completely different experience. Now we could see everything we had missed in the dark. We could see the narrowness of the path, the steep drop-offs, the incredible valley stretching out below us. It was beautiful in a whole new way. "Wow," I said to John. "I'm kind of glad we couldn't see that on the way here," he just laughed. Back at Serendipity, the simple act of turning on the heater and starting the coffee pot felt like the height of luxury. The smell of brewing coffee filled our tiny home on wheels. We sat at our little table, sipping from our favorite mugs, looking out the window at the mountains we had just been standing amongst. The world was alive with light and color. It was a quiet, deeply contented moment. The exhaustion was starting to set in, but it was a good kind of tired. The kind of tired you earn. People ask why that sunrise, out of all the sunrises we've seen, holds such a special place in my heart. I think it's because of the effort. We didn't just stumble upon it. We planned for it. We woke up in the cold and the dark. We drove a challenging road and hiked a narrow path. We earned that view. And that makes it so much more meaningful. It's a perfect metaphor for this lifestyle, really. Trading our old life of routine wasn't easy. There were challenges, moments of doubt, a steep learning curve. But the reward, the freedom, the moments of pure, unadulterated beauty, they are all the sweeter because of the effort it took to get here. And for me, there's another layer. Seeing Karen's face in that morning light, seeing that look of pure, unadulterated joy and wonder, that's as beautiful as any sunrise. It's a reminder of why we do this together. To share these moments, to see the world through each other's eyes. Our relationship has always been strong, but living on the road, solving problems together, and sharing these profound experiences has forged it into something even deeper. Exactly. That sunrise in the Dolomites was a peak experience, in every sense of the word. But a perfect day, a truly Karen-approved day, has to be balanced. It needs a bookend. If you start the day with a sunrise that's magnificent, you have to end it with a sunset that can hold its own. But it had to be something completely different. We'd done the epic mountaintop. For the other end of the day, I craved the ocean. I wanted to go from the highest, most jagged peaks to the widest, flattest horizon. From a solitary, hard-won victory to something else entirely. For that, we have to travel to another corner of Europe. We have to go to the coast of Portugal. Specifically, to a place called Cabo de São Vicente, or Cape St. Vincent. For centuries, this was considered the end of the known world. It's the southwesternmost point of mainland Europe. A place of wild, windswept cliffs and a whole lot of history. And it's where we found my favorite sunset. The journey to this sunset was the complete opposite of our pre-dawn mission in the Dolomites. There was no rush, no alarm clock. We spent the day meandering down the Algarve coast. The scenery shifted dramatically. The sharp, Gray peaks of the mountains were replaced by rolling green hills, small whitewashed villages, and eventually, the deep, powerful blue of the Atlantic Ocean. The feeling in the van was different, too. It was relaxed, lazy. We had the windows down, the salty air whipping through. We stopped for a long lunch of fresh grilled sardines at a little beachside cafe. It was a slow, sun-drenched day of travel, all leading up to the evening's main event. We weren't chasing the sun, we were just gently following it towards its resting place. We arrived at the Cape a good hour or so before sunset. It was immediately clear that this was not going to be the solitary experience we had in Italy. The area around the famous red and white lighthouse was already bustling. A whole fleet of camper vans was parked in the dusty lot, a temporary, international village of sunset chasers. Cars were pulling in, and people were spilling out onto the cliffs. It was a fascinating bit of people watching. You have every type of person there. There were the super serious photographers, already set up with their enormous tripods, polishing lenses and muttering about f-stops. There were young couples wrapped in a single blanket, whispering to each other. There were families with kids who were far more interested in chasing seagulls than watching the sky. It was a pilgrimage. The challenge here wasn't physical. It wasn't a cold, dark hike. The challenge was finding our own space in the middle of this shared experience. We loved the community aspect of van life, but for a moment as special as a sunset, we wanted a little pocket of peace for ourselves. We wanted to hear the ocean, not just the chatter of the crowd. So we did what we always do in these situations. We walked. We left the main throng by the lighthouse and started walking south along the cliff edge, keeping a very safe distance, of course. The cliffs there are incredible, hundreds of feet of sheer, stratified rock plunging straight into the churning ocean. Fishermen stood on impossible-looking ledges far below, casting their lines into the surf. After about 15 minutes, we found it. A little natural perch, slightly set back from the main path, with an uninterrupted view out to the west. There was nobody else around. We had left the crowd behind and found our private box for the evening's performance. We sat down on the cool, dry earth, our legs dangling in front of us, and just watched. And what a performance it was! Where the sunrise in the Dolomites was all about sharp peaks and delicate, pastel colors, this was about the sheer, overwhelming scale of the ocean. The horizon was a perfect, clean line, stretching for an infinity in either direction. The sun was a huge, molten orb, slowly, deliberately, sinking towards the water. The colors were different, too. They weren't soft and ethereal. They were bold, dramatic, almost violent. The sky was on fire. Deep, bleeding oranges, vivid crimsons, and streaks of molten gold painted the clouds and reflected on the surface of the water, creating a shimmering pathway of light that seemed to lead directly from us to the sun. The sound was a huge part of it. It wasn't the high-altitude silence of the mountains. It was the constant, rhythmic roar of the Atlantic. The sound of massive waves, borne thousands of miles away, ending their journey by crashing against the base of the cliffs below us. It was a powerful, hypnotic sound that you could feel in your chest. I remember thinking about all the explorers, centuries ago, who would have set sail from this coast, looking at this same sunset and heading out into that vast, unknown expanse. For them, this was the edge of everything. It gives the place a real sense of gravity, of history. You're not just watching a pretty sky, you're connecting with something elemental and timeless. I got my camera out, but it was a different kind of photography. In the Dolomites, I was trying to capture the intricate details of the rock and the subtle shifts in light. Here, I was just trying to capture the feeling of immensity. I took a photo of Karen, a perfect silhouette against that blazing sky, looking out at the ocean. It's still one of my favorite pictures from all our travels. As the last tiny sliver of the sun dipped below the horizon, something amazing happened. A sound drifted up the cliffs from the direction of the lighthouse. It was applause. Hundreds of people, all strangers from all over the world, spontaneously breaking into applause for the sun. It was such a simple, beautiful, human thing. A shared moment of gratitude for the day. We didn't applaud. Our moment was quieter. We just sat there in the deepening twilight, watching the colors slowly fade from the sky, from fiery orange to soft pink and finally, a deep, velvety blue. The first stars began to appear. We lingered for a long time, not wanting to break the spell. Eventually, we walked back to serendipity under a sky full of stars. The crowds were gone, the car park was half empty, but the village of vans remained. We decided not to drive on. We found a level spot, opened our side door to the sound of the ocean, and cooked dinner right there. It was just a simple pasta, but eating it with the sea breeze and the sound of the waves as our soundtrack made it feel like a banquet. That night, our conversation was about scale. About how standing on that cliff, looking at that endless ocean, makes you feel incredibly small, but in the best possible way. It puts your own life, your own problems, into perspective. It's humbling and liberating at the same time. When we look back, the contrast between those two experiences is what makes them so perfect together. The Dolomite sunrise was a personal triumph. It was cold and hard and solitary, a reward for effort. The Portuguese sunset was a communal celebration. It was warm and easy and shared, a collective moment of awe. And that really sums up this life for us. Some days are about pushing ourselves, about tackling challenges and reaching new heights. Other days are about slowing down, connecting with the world and the people in it, and just appreciating the simple beauty of being. You need both. You need the peaks and the coastlines. You need the solitude and the community. These moments, these sunrises and sunsets, they're the punctuation marks of our journey. They're the full stops and the exclamation points. They're the reason we put up with the less glamorous side of van life, the endless search for water sources, the days spent in laundromats, the time I had to fix a leaky faucet with nothing but a roll of duct tape and sheer optimism. We aren't just chasing views. Anyone can do that. We're collecting feelings. We're stockpiling memories that fuel us, that remind us, on the difficult days, why we chose this path. Why, after 50, we decided that a life of routine wasn't enough anymore. We wanted a life of stories. And speaking of stories, it seems our own day here in the Alps is coming to a close. The light is fading fast, and the first stars are starting to poke through the deep blue. We've gone from a sunrise earned through grit and determination to a sunset shared with the world. Two different places, two different feelings, but both hitting that same note of awe and gratitude. It makes us wonder, what about you? What are the moments that bookend your perfect days? It doesn't have to be a dramatic mountain peak or the edge of a continent. It could be the view from your favorite park bench, or a quiet moment in your own backyard. What are the memories you've collected that make it all worthwhile? We genuinely love reading your stories, so please, share them with us in the comments below. I think one of the greatest gifts of getting a little older, of passing that half-century mark, is that you develop a deeper appreciation for these things. You're not in such a rush anymore. You're not just trying to tick boxes off a list. You learn to savor the moments, to understand that the true richness of life is found not in the things you own, but in the light you see, the air you breathe, and the memories you create. This life isn't a permanent vacation. Let us be clear about that. There are breakdowns, both mechanical and, occasionally, emotional. There are wrong turns and closed roads and days when you just miss the simple comfort of a normal-sized shower. But then, a day comes along. A day that starts with a sky on fire over a forest of stone, and ends with the sun melting into the Atlantic Ocean. And on those days, you know, with absolute certainty, that you wouldn't trade this for anything in the world. Thank you so much for coming along with us on this little trip down our memory lane. We hope it brought you a bit of warmth and maybe a little inspiration for your own adventures, big or small. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and keep living fully, 1 mile, 1 story at a time. We'll see you on the road.